Alright, what's going on, guys? So, just felt like hopping on and doing another sort of just chatting over a game of zombies style of video. That and the video that I really should be uploading right now is still unedited, and I'm not gonna lie, the sheer length of what I have recorded that I need to edit down has kind of been scaring me away from working on it. So this is my solution to correct for my procrastinating. But the daily challenge today is to make it to round 20, so I decided to do the Horizon Jack. Figure we'll go for the lightning bow and then just see if we can carry myself to round 20. I tried to do this the other night, sort of just as a warm-up, and then I didn't end up getting around to recording the video. My gameplay didn't go so well either. I got fucked over by the Panzer Soldat because I ran out of ammo and didn't have enough points to, like, I just set myself up for basically the worst possible scenario. But anyway, so part of the final puzzle piece to what makes this the right video to do today is because I have yet again something on my mind to talk about. And I'd say this is far less personal than the first one. The last video I did of this style, I think it was largely me kind of discussing the direction of the channel. Today, I guess the best way to describe what I'm interested in talking about is the direction of the MCU, because I'm a nerd and I like watching these movies and shows. And I have some thoughts. So, as the title will suggest, so you guys will already know this, but this video is going to be largely addressing Daredevil because it is in response to another channel's video where they were discussing the finale of Daredevil Born Again Season 2. And while they found the majority of the rest of that season to be a little bit haphazard, they said that they found the finale actually to kind of rescue the show. And while I think they had some valid points, I found myself in 180 degrees complete disagreement with kind of their opinion overall. I personally am incredibly disappointed with the way Daredevil Season 2 left things and the way they handled what the bag of potential that they had. I shouldn't have grabbed this. I hate this goblin. You know, there was an immense amount of potential kind of sitting on the table, and they threw it on the floor to give to the dog, you know? So I'm probably going to end up cutting through this video because I'm likely going to have to keep pausing, rewatching their video to make sure I'm not just pulling some shit out of my ass. So I can just, like, rewatch what they talked about. I have my notes written down, so I know what I organized my thoughts so I know my opinions of the show, but I still want to rehear the way that they phrase their opinions so I can actually like accurately and fairly kind of debate the points they make. The show is called Stole My Line, by the way. It's these two gentlemen who seem to do a podcast entirely about movies and shows and whatnot, and they just have a discussion about the things that they've been watching over a little backyard campfire, which I think is just a fucking splendid idea. That's honestly how every podcast should be done. So definitely go check these boys out. They really seem knowledgeable about movies and stories, and part of what inspired me to do this video specifically is because I found that their video, despite the fact that I disagreed, was extremely compelling and interesting to listen to. So give them a look. I think they just recently did a rewatch of all the Star Wars movies as well, which I haven't embarked yet on listening to, but I absolutely will because I'm a massive Star Wars fan. But Anyway, we'll get on to the discussion. So the first thing that they kind of open the the episode with an analogy where they compare this season of Daredevil to going to a restaurant that you've been to before and you're recommending it to a friend. And this particular time that you go, it's like your food takes forever to come out. The waitress isn't the nicest you've ever been. Maybe it's a little overly busy or noisy or whatever. But then finally, after you kind of get through all that, when your food arrives, food tastes pretty good. So you're like, that wasn't the best experience I've had at this restaurant, but I would still consider trying it again. And you know what? That's fair. I don't really have much to say in response to that. I'd kind of agree with that. I'm not writing off Daredevil as a whole. I don't think this new show is like a complete joke. It's not as good as the original, and I don't think anyone really disagrees with that. But it's not bad, you know. It's made a lot of different choices. It stands out from, I want to say, any other show I've tried. So it at least has that originality going for it. But yeah, it's just been kind of mediocre so far. And this particular season, I have to say, just caps that all off. You know, it was an absolutely disappointing end, in my opinion, to what was all around a really disappointing season of a pretty show. So, and I've sort of organized my thoughts a little bit more in order of, I think, the severity of the quote-unquote issue I had, whereas as opposed to in the direct order of the points they bring up. So if you're watching my video before or like immediately before or immediately after their episode, I apologize for the fact that this may come out a little bit nonsensical, but so the first kind of thing that I really needed to bring up is sort of my issues with the show in general, because they are more general and not as... Oh, fuck, I forgot how expensive that door is. Like, they're not specific to this episode, which is really what I want to focus on, is my issues with the finale, or the season in particular, but I have issues with the whole show as well, so we got to address them all. So, first things first, I do not love... So what made the first Daredevil show great really was, I think, largely that it was working with a small budget. That kept a lot of the strength, like that forced them to make a show that relied on characters and dialogue and the interactions between the characters, and not a show that could rely on its showy or flashiness or its fight scenes. But it also made it so that when they did have fight scenes, they had to get clever. They had to be like in my opinion, lower budget action almost always comes out better than high budget action, with the exception of Transformers, where like they must have put every single animator on like a daily stipend of crack cocaine in order to get them to execute what they did for those movies. That's the only exception. Other than that, I think a grounded, well choreographed, and well thought out, using good camera tricks over good computer tricks, fight scene or action scene is always better. This second show or reboot of Daredevil has ruined a lot of those, in my opinion, because they have not managed to hit, in my opinion, on these one-take scenes that the first show was known for, like their long hallway fights, or the first episode of the first season from this show with the bullseye stairwell fight. It kind of, like, it was almost there, but I still felt a lot like it just wasn't, like, something felt off. It felt like they were almost at the original, but something felt off. I think there might have been 2 or 3 cases of like one-take fight scenes in the second season, and none of them hit, in my opinion. They just all felt like they were chasing after the hype of having the one-take fight scene that the first show was known for, but really didn't know how to execute it well. So that's among my first issues, is that they aren't executing the grittiness or the kind of naturalness that comes to the fight scenes and whatnot that the first season had. And a big part of that as well, and the guys on Stole My Line do mention this, but they do some really funky thing with the camera and the camera lens to try and give it this faux, like, cinematicness. Where they've kind of, like, they record it on this, I think it's an anamorphic lens, they call it, or like a fisheye lens. And then they letterbox it, which they don't need to do, because the issues that made letterboxing prevalent aren't really around that much now. And also, if you're going to record in a format that you can put, like, they do it intentionally is the issue, instead of because they have to. And they do it because it allows them to like, move the focus of the scene kind of at will. Like, in the first season, the first time you see it, I thought, like, okay, this is a bit of a gimmick, but it's neat, because they use it to symbolize when Matt is kind of using his abilities or whatever to focus in on what he's hearing. I was like, okay, that's kind of neat. I get what they're going for. You didn't have that in the first season. You just had to rely on him, like, twitching his head a little bit, which he still does. So again, you could have just left it at that and it would have been fine. But the issue is, it was very clearly a gimmick, and it got old fast. And so now every time they try and do this, like, they'll pull the letterboxes away or whatever and stretch out the screen, or they'll zoom out of the camera because there's, like, more footage off screen that they've just had cropped out of screen because of the way they do the camera. It just doesn't, like, it's like, okay, guys, it's too much, you know. You're trying to do something that isn't fitting for what you've put on the screen. So I guess that's really not about the action. That's kind of getting into the camera work. But that, to me, was actually a major complaint, is I just felt like that was completely unnecessary, and really, I felt diminished what was otherwise, like, certain scenes. Okay, here, let me clean this up, because I feel like I'm not explaining the point very well. I hate when shows or movies try too hard to like, it's, I'm sure I've actually used this in another video if I've been discussing, like, shows or movies, but when movies try too hard to get you to notice something clever that they did, and it's like that, it's like a equivalent of your buddy giving you, like, an elbow and a wink or whatever when you get to, like, a part in a movie that he knows you're gonna like or whatever. And it's like, it completely ruins it, man. Like, you can't bump me and expect me to have the reaction you want, because now I'm just like, fuck you want. Let me enjoy what I'm, if I catch this reference or something, I want the pride and joy of knowing I caught it, and I want to feel like the director or creator of the art respects my intelligence as an audience enough to let me get the reference or the clever thing that he did on my own. I don't want him to move the camera and cue up the music and make the actor pause so the audience can have one of those moments where it's like, aha, I got it, you know. I don't want that. That feels really, I don't want to say demeaning, because I'm not thin-skinned. I don't like, oh, the creator doesn't respect me as an audience, but it feels lame is what it does. It's like, I got it, guys, you know. Thanks for shoving it in my face, but I already got it. And unfortunately, this season did a lot of that, and this camera thing that I'm whining about is a major part of it. I felt that they, like, tried to do too much with the camera, like, to symbolize that, oh, something intense is happening, or, like, somebody, you know, Kingpin's arriving now, or, like, I didn't like that. And it's another part of something that I will hit on a little bit later in the episode. or in the video, but that I don't want to bring up just yet because I think some other stuff should be said first. So the other thing, just to add on to the tail end of that, but on top of this weird camera trick they've been doing, they've also been doing some weird, and this is actually a greater MCU problem right now than even just Daredevil, but they've been doing some weird CGI shit lately, and it might just be down to the, like, MCU's CGI has been a major hot topic among people who watch the MCU lately, I feel like. So I think that this is probably a symptom of what the issue has been. But I'm finding, I noticed it in Daredevil, I noticed it in, there was more than just Daredevil. It was most egregious, I felt like, especially in that first season, in the first episode. But the characters have this weird rubber stretchiness to them. And so, like, if you want an example of what I'm referring to, go back, watch, like, I'm sure there's a video of it on YouTube. Watch the, like, first 10 minutes of the first episode of Born Again. And the scene when Matt first gets into the Daredevil costume and, like, uses his Billy Club grappling hook to get, like, and lands on a fire escape. Never mind the fact that the skybox on that scene looks pretty crap. Never mind that it's just not the best work they could have done. The way he lands and the way he, I mean, even the way he swings to get up there, they don't even look like they, like, did stunt work and put it over a green screen. They look like they took a 3D model, animated him to do that, and then also, have I got power on yet? I just realized I've run through that power room a couple of times. I don't think I actually flipped the switch. Oh, I did. Oh, I'm fucked, boys. Oh, shit. Yeah, like, actually, as I said that, I realized there's an even worse case. It's in She-Hulk. And not, look, there's plenty of time to rip on the things wrong with She-Hulk later on. I actually didn't hate that show as much as some people did, although I wasn't a fan. But Daredevil in She-Hulk specifically, his fight scenes were awful because they made him too acrobatic, if I may. And they made him look rubbery. And this is probably, again, one of my biggest complaints against this show versus the first Daredevil show, is the grittiness of the fight scenes are completely taken away when you add too much CGI to make him do these acrobatics and stunts that if an actor or even a stunt actor can't accomplish them on his own, Daredevil shouldn't be able to either. He doesn't have superhuman strength or physicality. He has enhanced senses, and that's it. So if you put him through these, like, CGI things that, I'll give you credit, like, they work really well for Mr. Fantastic in the new Fantastic Four movie, and I'm sure they're going to work really well for Spider-Man in his new movie. They don't work for Daredevil. That's not the kind of, he shouldn't be that acrobatic or flowy or squishy, I guess. Like, it's weird. I don't know how to describe really what looks so wrong with it, but I just know that I can see it, and I'm willing to bet pretty much anyone else can see it if they look for it as well. So yeah, that's kind of my last argument, sort of about the action sequences and whatnot. All right, perfect. So the first kind of major thing they bring up, other than, like, their general opinion, is the courtroom scene, and they argue that it's pretty awesome. And some of what I can hear where they're coming from, but in my personal opinion, the courtroom scene of this finale, so specifically, like, the court proceedings, because most of the episode actually takes place in the courtroom, but the courtroom proceedings specifically, actually potentially the weakest part of the episode because of a couple of reasons. And the first most nitpicky problem I have is actually I really struggled to get over, and again, only because I've watched a fair amount of lawyer or law type shows, And I've seen enough of like lawyer reacts videos to recognize these. These were perhaps some of the worst like court inaccuracies as to how a court would run, how objections are used, how the lawyers would behave. And you can chalk some of that up to the fact that we're specifically trying to show this as now a corrupt courtroom, because you've got Fisk, Fisk testifying for a bill that he himself made with a corrupt lawyer on his side. And he's obviously like the judge and the prosecution are being pressured. So there's some of that, but like every single objection, I think that the one that the district attorney spews. Sorry, not corrupt lawyer. The district attorney is on Fisk's side. Every objection I think that he uses is used incorrectly. Like his reasoning that he gives is not right. And yet Judge sustains pretty much all of them, which is ridiculous. But then kind of beyond that, again, I had a bit of an issue with them. And again, the guys on Stole My Line actually do mention this. But like when Daredevil, or Matt, reveals himself as Daredevil, and he like throws his billy club around, or his cane that he folds up into his billy club, I guess, around the courtroom. And then he has a nice little pose down at the end after he catches it. I'm like, you know, ever since MCU poked fun at themselves in Black Widow for all the posing and stuff that they have their characters do, I kind of thought maybe they'd tone it down, you know? Like, you can be self-reflective, but you should be self-corrective as well. They didn't do that. They're still having all these, like, stop and stare moments. So that was part of what I didn't like about... I felt like even just that little scene completely diminished how much I could enjoy what was actually a pretty genius move to have Daredevil, again, or Matt, reveal himself as Daredevil at that time to save Karen Page, who was the relationship throughout the season. Like, I thought that was fairly fitting, but I just didn't like the way he did it. I'm like, this is not even in-universe believable. You know, it's obviously not real-life believable. I feel like people would either... Whatever. Like, it didn't feel fitting for the tone of the character or the show. And so to me, that just made that scene so much less enjoyable. Got it. There was some pretty good writing in this courtroom scene because... like they have the part where, as a lawyer, Matt catches Kingpin in his lie, kind of, about where he knew that Matt was Daredevil and praised Matt as a hero, but condemned Daredevil as a criminal, and then later also said that the person underneath the mask of a vigilante and the vigilante are always one and the same, or that the vigilante is the true character and the person in everyday life is the true mask. So that was kind of clever. I did appreciate, like, the lawyering from Matt felt pretty good, and they did do a good job, again, at making Matt behave like Matt as a lawyer. But just the position they were in and what he was lawyering about, I felt like. And then him having to reveal himself as Daredevil was good, but then the way he did it was not. I felt like that courtroom scene was just a lot of squandered potential, which is obviously the thing that truly pisses me off the most about the MCU these days. Even the most okay MCU projects simply can't be... Holy fuck, what am I doing? Even the most, like, okay MCU projects are just a little bit worse because you know that they could be better, you know? I'm not at the point where I'm still giving brownie points to just an okay... With the exception of Wonder Man, I'll give it its brownie points because it was a good written show, even though it seems like it's pretty inconsequential to the rest of the greater universe. I'll give it its flowers. But everything else, because it's not... It either feels like they're taking something that they had previously set up and it wastes it, or it's not setting anything new up, it severely makes me question what the next direction of the MCU is. And I will discuss that more heavily, again, down the road. Because there's even more to that, in my opinion. More pressing application of that way of thinking. Did I get this while I was down there? No, I am special. It is at this point that I will also acknowledge that I'm screwed in this zombies game. No, it's at this point I'll acknowledge that it's now actually been quite some time. I'm bummed. Oh, we made it. It's been now like a fair bit of time since I actually watched the show. Like their episode alone came out at the beginning of May, and it's now the last day of May. And the show came out, I mean, I guess it would have been at least just a couple days before that. So it's been about a month since I watched the show. And I've rewatched their episode, but I haven't rewatched the show, which I probably should have done before I started spewing all this nonsense. But the last kind of thing that I want to sort of address before we get into what would be the before they start discussing kind of the things that they weren't the biggest fan of, which essentially are the action scenes. I also felt that Fisk was handled respectfully quite terribly in this season, just in general. And I'll explain why in a second. But Vanessa Fisk has been, to me at least, the far more interesting of those two, of that duo in this in the reboot, in Born Again overall, season 1 and 2. Between Fisk and Vanessa Fisk, she has compelled me to be interested in what she's done far more, because essentially the storyline is while Fisk was away in jail, she ran the business. And while she did it, partially because she's not the kind of kingpin that Fisk is, she struggled with it a little bit, but she managed to put on this, like, the hardened persona and the grit needed to do it. But unfortunately that came with making some poor decisions that end up coming back to bite them in the ass. Killing Foggy. Because she's trying to open this port. Foggy learns about it, is going to put to light that this is her plan kind of in the courtroom. So she has him killed, which is a pretty unclean way of handling that business, and obviously kind of leads to people being Daredevil being on their ass again. And so I found that really good. And so with that, I thought it was good writing and good Chekhov's gunnery that Vanessa Fisk was going to bite the bullet for that, right? I think that Bullseye is probably the only character, in my opinion, who has actually done justice in this season. Out of the entire ensemble, he's the only one, I think, whose character makes perfect sense for the scenario they're in, where you can't have 3 seasons in a row of Bullseye just being the Daredevil hater, right? So him in his fucked up deranged mind, thinking that despite all the shit he's done, he can actually legitimately make things better by doing what he does, his fucked up mental illness serial killing, but to the right people, is a perfect, I completely agree with writing the character in that way. I think that that's a very interesting way to take a character who has the perspective and traits that he does. So him trying to kill Fisk, which is okay, admittedly I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. Him trying to kill Fisk doesn't make the most sense to me. Him trying to kill Vanessa on purpose would have made a lot more sense if that was kind of the go from the beginning of the season. Him trying to kill Wilson but inadvertently killing Vanessa means it doesn't really matter. The result is the same. I think Vanessa dying and leaving Wilson without his North Star to bring the Bullseye kind of analogy further. And thus us having Wilson Fisk / Kingpin, or essentially having Wilson Fisk and getting Kingpin, right? Like, we've had a fairly in-control Wilson Fisk who I believe truly does care for New York, wants to make the city a better place, believes that getting rid of vigilantes would do that, and has kind of put his Kingpin activities on the back burner. I thought that was good. And then he loses Vanessa Fisk, gets all pissed off and angry, or should, and kind of goes back to being Kingpin. Perfectly good course of action. And I think doing that in the right way could have made for an extremely interesting next couple movies worth of street level MCU content. And that's, again, I'm going to get back to this point later because I really want to make a point out of it. But it's just another piece of squandered potential that they end up concluding Fisk kind of at the end. At least they conclude Fisk in New York by the end of this season, and I don't think they do it well. I should be killing these motherfuckers up here. I am so out of sorts as to what I'm trying to do in zombies right now. So, probably to me, the thing that really sunk this whole episode the most, the absolute worst, most egregious offense they made, is probably the way that Fisk kind of handles, like, his hallway scene, essentially, where he essentially right after saying, "I love New York, I'm here to fight for you, I'm gonna make it a better place," gets put under pressure by some protesters and proceeds to brutally fucking murder a massive group of New York citizens. In what I have to say is probably one of the most poorly relayed instances of trying to say that he's, like, mentally unstable, right? Like, he's this whole season he's been working hard to make New York a better place, to set in motion his goals of getting rid of vigilantes and keep his business affairs in order, as well as run the city. So he's already, like, he's put in the effort, and he's frustrated that they're not all working. Then obviously the city still isn't responding well, so he's probably pissed off that he's got protesters in general. Plus, he's just lost Vanessa 2 or 3 episodes ago. I get what they were going for, that this is now a Fisk who has just reached a breaking point because he can't fucking win, right? Like, he's put in his heart and soul into trying to make New York a better place for this whole season. Sorry, for 2 seasons even. I'm kind of having issue remembering where the line between season 1 and season 2 is. But anyway, I felt that the episodes in between Vanessa Fisk dying and this finale did not accurately portray to me that Wilson was completely out of control, or even just an uneven seesaw where if you tip him too far one way, he's gonna flip his shit. I felt that when he finally does lose it in this season, I hadn't gotten enough of a build-up suggesting that he was approaching his breaking point, that this would do it. And so him, holed up in the courtroom as if it's a, like as if he's a hostage in his own city by his own citizens, and then deciding that he's had enough and he's going to kick down the door and start bashing heads in and crushing skulls. It felt so out of character and just inappropriate, quite frankly, for the character and the show. And so that was already a major issue in my book. Too far? And I felt like that, to me, really just put a cap on Fisk, who is already not being written in peak Fisk way, you know? Like, he is a real conniving, smart guy. The way they play him in this, not the most, like, I don't think this is really a major part of his character in the comics, but again, I'm not a comic book reader, so it doesn't really matter. But Vincent D'Onofrio plays him as a more kind of socially anxious and awkward guy with a lot of childhood trauma, which is fair, because he does. And I find that a more compelling version of the character, so I'm alright with it anyway. But then if you can't write him well, it just comes across as him being awkward, and then you have to remind yourself that, like, yeah, this guy is a massive crime ringleader who is now also the mayor of the city. If he's, like, really socially awkward and has all these weird pauses and doesn't say stuff that sounds smart, why would anybody be a fan of him? How is this a believable character for his position? So you need to nail Fisk writing in order to have a good Fisk, and I felt like this season they didn't quite nail it. He has a couple of scenes where what he's saying just isn't. It's the equivalent of writing all these fancy buzzwords in your high school essay in hopes that that's what's going to get you an A, but the teacher can just read immediately through your bullshit and knows that you have no idea what you're talking about because it just took you 5 sentences to say, like, yeah, this character likes bread, you know. So, like, in general, I couldn't really appreciate Fisk this season, and then they've just completely fucked it with this. Like, I did not read him as being near his breaking point at this point in the season. He was about 60% of the way there, right? Like, you throw in a couple more scenes that show him getting pissed off earlier than usual or making errors, you know. And I think this is another flaw with the shorter episode counts that all these MCU shows, or even Disney shows in general, are doing, is we don't get to sit with these characters long enough, and sometimes that actually just cuts, like, the character development at the knees, right? Like, if I don't have enough time of thinking of this character as being in this phase of his character arc or development, it's not going to feel convincing when you try and tell me he's at the end of it. If I get 2 more episodes or whatever, during which Fisk is, Fisk is a little bit quicker to anger, clearly less stable because of what happened to Vanessa, I'll believe it when he absolutely goes apeshit on the New York citizens who have essentially turned on him. But then again, you also still have to write him well. You can't have him saying, I love New York and will defend you till my last breath right before. But as long as you correct that, I'll at least believe what you're trying to tell me now. And yeah, they didn't hit that mark. Then, this fight goes through the hallway. Daredevil shows up, fights him off. Jessica Jones is there for no apparent reason other than because they wanted to show that she is also back and it's not just Daredevil. My dad was really happy that she was in the show. I couldn't have cared less. Her character's okay. It wasn't for me, but I respect that she was pretty big for a lot of people in the original Defender, like in the Defenders lineup of shows that we had. But if you're gonna introduce her, at least introduce her in a way that we have any reason to give a shit about. I'm not eating that up just because it's a character that people like and you've reintroduced. I didn't think she needed to be in this season at all. That was pointless. But yeah, so Daredevil's there, Jessica Jones is there, White Tiger 2.0 shows up, and isn't really all that consequential. And then we get out to the lobby of this courtroom where, like, all of a sudden it's Fisk against, essentially, it looks like the entirety of that block of New York. And they're all wearing these fucking Daredevil masks, which I thought is stupid. Because I'm just like, this isn't like a Spider-Man. He's one of those guys who... I get that in, like, they sort of try and write him this way, but it doesn't, again, doesn't feel fitting for the character that he's this figure that the whole city loves because he stands for, like, it could be anyone under the mask. Them wearing the mask in this scenario to go protest Fisk rubs me as if you wore a Drake mask during the Kendrick and Drake beef, right? Like, it's what are you doing? It's a little weird. At the like, they should have at least made it so there were a couple other vigilante-esque masks in the crowd, and then I'd believe that it's, oh, okay, these are just people who strongly believe the vigilantes are a good thing, and that Fisk's anti-vigilante stance is wrong. And I'm like, okay, sure, I get it. But yeah, so anyways, they all are in this courtroom lobby. Fisk gets out at the top of the stairwell, sees them all, absolutely murders a couple of them, beats the shit out of the rest. And then Daredevil comes in and has to fight through this mob to get to Fisk to have a heart-to-heart, and he's yelling at people, stop, no, we're better than this. And for whatever reason they do. Like, he makes it to the top of the steps, gets eye to eye with Fisk, who's in the middle of a freaking bloodshed, and being absolutely mobbed by all these regular people who are dressed as Daredevil. And then they all just stop and stare as he just looks at Fisk in the eye, who has just murdered several of the people that they were just standing shoulder to shoulder with earlier. And he's covered in blood, and he's been the mayor of their city, and he's essentially just exposed himself as a fucking nutcase. And we're supposed to believe that these people aren't shoving Matt on his ass to get to Fisk, to freaking drown the man in his own spit. Like, this had to be, in my opinion, the worst possible way you could have ended the show, because you've where did the stakes go? Where did the believability go? How are we ending a season like this on another scenario of Matt doesn't want to kill Fisk, but he wants to solve the problem. Fisk does probably want Matt dead, but doesn't manage to, or doesn't want to for some other reason. And then they manage to have a discussion about morals, or again, Matt is able to take his morals and somehow solve the problem with a heart-to-heart with Fisk again. I personally wanted this show to end one of two ways, and one significantly more than the other. The lesser preferred, but would have been tolerable scenario would be that we have to return to Daredevil being upset with himself because he breaks his no-killing rule and kills Fisk. Because if the idea is we're probably going to be done with Fisk for the foreseeable future now, at least in the Daredevil show for the next couple seasons, if that's the idea, you might as well kill him off. Because I think that at least does respect to his character during his send-off, and opens the floor to introducing a recast or a second version of the character. What I much would have rathered is that we don't actually get a resolution to this conflict in this season, and Fisk stays as the mayor, as a more unhinged version of himself because he's lost Vanessa, and seems to hate, or has to deal with a bunch of people in New York hating him as the mayor, so he becomes more like a Kingpin figure than a Wilson Fisk figure, and we actually have him running New York, and New York is something of a war zone that the next couple of movies take place during. I would have liked that so much more, because to me that was kind of the whole principle, or the stakes of of Fisk's reign of terror as mayor. I want this show, I want the next 2 or 3 Defenders related shows to do that, and I really wanted to see Spider-Man Brand New Day take place during Fisk's reign of terror. So his being everyday Spider-Man, when he's all depressed and has no friends, is also taking place at a time where being Spider-Man kind of fucking sucks because New York is in shambles and everyone's killing each other. I personally thought that would have made that more compelling. I get that you can still just be your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man on your own, stopping your common level thugs, but if the common level thugs were everywhere, that would have been more interesting. And I also thought this was good because then this Punisher show that came out at the end of Daredevil, essentially in place of Daredevil Born Again Season 2, Episode 9, like, he's living in whatever part of the Bronx he's in, dealing with his own mental issues. But you see, every time he's out on the streets, it does seem like New York is a war zone. The criminals are fucking insane. They're like these almost average dudes getting right up in people's faces and being like deranged and weird and beating the shit out of anybody they want. And there's cops and fire everywhere. And I'm like, okay, so are we doing New York as a battleground or not? Because to me, if you've now made Fisk go away as mayor, I suspect that you're not going to treat New York like a battleground. You're going to say that that conflict's been resolved. So, again, I'm kind of revisiting this issue of a lot of wasted potential in this show, because I don't think Fisk should have been dealt with by the end of it. I think he should have been a much bigger problem. He should have been the Thanos of street-level MCU for the next couple of projects while you're getting this whole multiverse and mutant and Fantastic Four saga bullshit sorted out. You know, like, while you're working on that, make it so that what's happening in New York is it's a fucking mess, and these few superheroes who are around now that the Avengers are gone are really struggling to sort it out. I think that also gives you potential to finally resolve that conflict by introducing the Young Avengers, who you've been now teeing up for, it feels like, 5 years, starting with like Hawkeye and Ms. Marvel and even Doctor Strange. Like you keep introducing these Young Avengers characters. You clearly want to do the Young Avengers to replace the old Avengers, I guess, alongside like you had the original lineup of Avengers. I feel like you're going to get Sam Wilson and a scratch team of Avengers who aren't going to last for very long, but will be succeeded by the Young Avengers. And you're pitting them against the Thunderbolts, or the new Avengers, or whatever they're calling them. I don't know how the hell to keep track of all these teams at this point. Yeah, I don't know. I've found that the show itself was not very compelling. I didn't find myself really loving any of the performances or the way the characters are handled, save for Bullseye, who I think whenever he shows up next, he's going to be kind of back on his bullshit, probably, because he's going to think he just did a good thing. Daredevil's going to wake him the fuck up and say, like, no, you kind of are still a dickhead, and he's going to be like, oh, well, fuck you. If I can't make myself a better person by doing what I did, I'm just going to go back to being a bad guy, because I'm not changing my ways. I think he'll be handled well whenever he shows up again next. But everyone else is just kind of, you know. Like, writing and or performance is a little flat. Characters aren't the most believable, or their story arcs aren't the most believable. And there's really no, because you took away the stakes of Fisk being the mayor, because he's now not the mayor he was the mayor for a grand total of one TV show and one special presentation, it seems. And, you know, like, I'll try and be at least a little fair. It's possible that we're going to find out some of the projects that come out in the next little bit take place during this phase, and so it's not just this show that he's the mayor. But either way, the point kind of stands. The only significant plot point of this show that impacts any of the rest of the MCU, and that's a very small one because, again, it's just this character, but now Matt has revealed himself as Daredevil. That's kind of it. So I just feel like you have a show that has potential to, despite being season 2 of a reboot of, I don't want to say a minor character. Daredevil is like an A-list MCU character. He's just street level, which means his impact should only impact street level characters. Good? Hell yeah. So aside from that little bit, like, I wanted to see this show have a little bit more impact. And I get that that's also in, kind of in counter or works against a lot of other people's belief that they don't want these shows affecting the rest of the MCU because lately the MCU has felt like a chore, where you have to watch this, that, and that before you can watch the next thing, right? I get that. I can respect that. But at the same time, you can open Spider-Man Brand New Day, or put it in the first couple of minutes that Mayor Fisk is still doing Mayor Fisk's things. Like, the Kingpin is in charge. Then show that Spider-Man is is stressed the fuck out dealing with these day-to-day crimes. And that's all you really need to do to replace... You don't need to watch Daredevil. You can fill people in. And I feel like that setting is far more compelling than now not having Fisk as the mayor during this. Like, I swear, if part of the thing that Spider-Man has to do is deal with the new mayor, and so part of his job as Spider-Man is putting up with that, I'm just not going to be impressed. It's going to remind me very much of kind of the dynamic that was going on between Sam Wilson and Thaddeus Ross before we got the whole Red Hulk thing. And I'm just like, again, not compelling. One character as well, sorry to kind of interrupt myself. One character other than Bullseye, who I actually think is pretty interesting, and I seem to be, again, the Stole My Line guys are in pretty direct disagreement with me on this one. I actually find Heather, the psychiatrist, to be a relatively interesting character. I think that what they're doing with her is kind of a clever way of handling this character, quite simply. So in the first season, whatever, she's another hot love interest for Matt to sleep or to get involved with. And obviously she doesn't have the greatest opinion of vigilantes to begin with, but then she gets attacked by one and she absolutely hates vigilantes now, so she doesn't handle the knowledge that Matt is Daredevil very well. Other than that, I'd say in the first season, she's a little flat. That's okay. The second season, she's dealing with this, like, post-Muse attack. And it's clearly given her, like, a severe sort of... I don't want to speak for people who have been in this position. This is a very heavily loaded thing to discuss, but I imagine it's sort of similar to the way that people become guarded after finding themselves in a sexual assault situation. And again, that's sort of the MCU. If that is true, I'll fault the MCU for, again, just trying to deal with whatever is like the relevant social justice issue. It's an important thing to talk about, but you got to do it correctly. And I feel like if you're just trying to shoehorn it in here by instead making it a character who's been attacked by a serial killer, but oh no, that was actually an allegory for... Tyler's calling me. Give me a sec. He was asking me if I wanted to play Apex Legends. I said, nope, get that bitch out of here. I don't play those stupid Battle Royale games. Anyway, what was I in the middle of? Yeah, I don't like the idea of them trying to shoehorn in this commentary on social justice without directly addressing it and doing it well. But if we kind of take that out of it, I still think that what they've done with Heather's character is extremely cool to me. I think after being attacked by a serial killer, that essentially proves your opinion of vigilantes correct. You're obviously not going to be in a great mental state, and you'll probably take that like rage or fear and pin it on vigilantes. So she starts doing these fake, or not fake, but like lying in her psychiatry reports to help take down vigilantes in the courtroom. What the hell was that noise? Oh, that was the pad recharging. I've never been there when it's made that noise. That's really weird. Oh, this is charged too. I just need to make the shot. Okay. Yeah, so she's like got this anxiety now because she's been attacked and she's like not mentally okay. She clearly hates vigilantes and is blaming them for all her issues. And I believe that part of what's going on with the whole Muse thing, because a lot of people were disappointed the way the Muse played by that guy from Wednesday was treated. I have this theory in my head that he's not truly like the MCU's Muse. I think they're gonna do something with the way his powers work and sort of treat him like a spirit or a possessor of sorts. And so right now, Heather, in the midst of her anger and anxiety over being attacked, is also dealing with this like spirit of Muse looking over her shoulder and showing up in her mirrors and whatnot. And it's slowly twisting her mind kind of into continuing what Muse was doing, Muse 1.0, we'll say. Because if I'm not mistaken, that was essentially Muse's thing as well, as he had childhood trauma. That's what he was seeing her for. It's why he was going to therapy. He has that childhood trauma. And it's essentially trying to get her to solve her trauma from being attacked by Muse by doing the same thing that Muse did. Am I missing a step? I am, aren't I? Is one of the campfires not electrified? That one is. That one might not be, actually. Ah, okay. Because these fuckers. I should actually try and grenade them so I can just not deal with a motherfucker running around. So, like, and that sort of helps explain away some of the weirder things with her character right now. Like, the whole choking thing with Buck I've seen has given some people pause. And I think, and I actually put this in a comment on the episode from Stole My Line, because I thought it was a pretty genius observation, if I do say so myself. But I think that it's essentially Buck knowing what it's like to be, or to have murderous intent kind of in his heart, trying to help out someone who's clearly in need. So he, knowing he's kind of the cold-hearted man that he is, he can take being choked by a woman to help her out and like help her kind of get over her fear that she still has from having been attacked by a serial killer. I think that's sort of what that is. But what inadvertently ends up happening is she actually discovers that she kind of likes inflicting the pain on someone else that she feels. It's like, you know, Buck had the right idea of it, but she's taken it and just made it a little more twisted. And that's probably largely the spirit of Muse possessing her. That's it at work, telling her like, yes, kill people, hurt people, it'll make you feel better. And so her putting on the mask at the end of the season is all but confirming, like, yes, she is now the new Muse 2.0, we can say. And I think because she is a little bit more sadistic even, and also has this personal connection to Daredevil that I'd argue the first one didn't, this is now the Muse that we're gonna have, who should actually be a threat like people wanted from the comics, who is like potentially has this weird was it sensory like dead zone that makes it so Daredevil can't detect her, I guess, or it can't detect Muse. I think that's essentially what that's the stage we're at, is she's going to be the next Muse, and by kind of building her up this way, they can justify her being a stronger version of Muse, which I think basically makes her a cooler version of Muse. So I am actually on team Heather is a good character in the show. And I respect it, because she went from being a very boring character to now having, again, potential. This is important to preface, is that I'm working all on the potential that she could be a good, interesting character. I don't know why I'm doing that, because as of late, nothing Marvel has really given me much reason to believe in potential. But I think she has the potential to be a very compelling character going forward, and I do look forward to see if they do her justice. That is really the issue I'm having with a lot of stuff in the MCU, is it really comes down to there being potential and me having to hope that they do it justice. It's really like gambling is what this is. Disney is making me gamble, but instead of money, I'm using my interest in their projects. And the unfortunate thing is they know they have a fucking bottomless supply of it, because we'll just keep, like, we'll keep coming in on faith that they'll eventually do it justice. That is the issue with Marvel and Star Wars and most Disney things right now. But I think I've said pretty much everything I needed to say. We'll cap this kind of off just by reiterating that, to me, what is most disappointing about this show is that it had potential, a good bit of potential. I think if they do it right, if you get people in there who are looking a couple projects ahead and coordinating what's going on, I think you take something from this show and you make it actually quite impactful and interesting, and they didn't do that. And I have to give them the opposite of give them their flowers, whatever that might be, because of it. I think Spider-Man is actually, I'm less excited for Spider-Man now that I don't believe they are going to do Fisk's Reign of Terror in New York during his movie. I think they're going to focus almost solely on this whole kind of man-spider mutation that I think he's going through. They're also shoving Jean Grey. John. I actually don't know how to pronounce that name correctly. I want to say Jean, but that's the male way of pronouncing that in French. Either way, Jean Grey. They're trying to shove Jean Grey in here, it seems like, which alongside like his mutation, they couldn't more obviously be trying to make mutants like the next big thing, but they're going about it so weirdly, I have to say. Not wrong, I'm not ready to say wrong yet, but weirdly for sure. They're doing that, and then I guess the hand's in it somehow too, which I'm sure is going to be correlated with Born Again season 3, because if Fisk is gone now and he's in fucking Tahiti or wherever he is, he's clearly not going to be the big bad, and I think we might actually not get much of Fisk again, because it sounds like Vincent D'Onofrio might be coming close to being done playing him, just because he's kind of getting up there in age. He wore a fat suit this season because he couldn't make the physical transformation required to look like Fisk himself, obviously, which I wholeheartedly respect, man. Like, if that's a not necessary thing to put your body through to play the character the way you do, I think Vincent D'Onofrio plays a very interesting Fisk, and I'd like him to stay playing Fisk, and I'd like him to do it in whatever way doesn't compromise his health. But I could see this leading to him not playing him anymore, because it sounds like that's the kind of thing that corporate looks at and says, if he can't fully commit, he probably has other issues, and maybe we don't want him under contract anymore. I don't know, maybe that's my sports opinion leaking over into my cinema and Hollywood opinions, but whatever. Yeah, I kind of get the sense that maybe the hand is going to be the next issue. Like, we're probably going to get Elektra back and the hand and the Defenders again to face the hands in the next season. So I don't know. I guess like maybe Spider-Man will be a transitional stage type movie. I don't know. We'll be dealing with his shit in the midst of this handover of Fisk being the mayor to now him being gone, there being a new mayor, and the hand coming to fill in the role, or like to fill in the power vacuum that was left behind from Fisk's illegal activities. So both his legal and illegal activities, or illegal activities, are being left. The door has been left open for new people to come in. So fuck, if we're lucky and I get what I really want, this would be the perfect time, since you've now squandered Kingpin as mayor. at the very least, bring in somebody else significant and give us Norman Osborn. I'll save my discussion on more Spider-Man related stuff and specifically what I want them to do for Norman Osborn in the MCU for another episode. I'm going to leave this here because my buddy Tyler is waiting for me. So thank you all so very much for watching. Stole my line, guys. Was Drew and Grant. If you guys do end up watching this, because I will probably end up tagging you in the title if that's how YouTube works. I like your episodes, man. I'm going to keep following you guys. And thank you... thank you for allowing me to post this response to your video and ride the coattails of your really good discussion. Yeah, I will see you guys all in the next episode. Peace.